Dear learners of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, welcome to this session related to your course on business economics. Today we shall discuss from your unit of theory of demand, the lesson on factors which are determining demand. Before we get into what are the various factors which determine demand, let us understand a few basic concepts related to demand, wherein we will talk about what is demand, what is a demand schedule, what is meant by law of demand, how is the demand curve drafted, and what is a demand function. These basic things will help you understand the entire demand analysis, and it will help you to understand what are the various factors which determine demand. Let us come to the first thing, meaning of demand. Now, since childhood we all have been wanting and wishing to own many things, be it in terms of as a child we wanted toys or probably an ice cream or a candy. When we grew up as adults, we probably wanted to watch some movie or go to some park, and when we started to earn income, we wanted to buy a house, a car, or many other things we wish to take. Now, all these things put together are nothing but what is it that the consumer wishes to buy, what is it that the consumer wants to procure. Demand basically is nothing but all the possible quantities of commodities which a consumer is ready to buy at a given price and at a given point of time. For example, as on today, if I have rupees 100 with me and I want to buy, say for example, a kg of mangoes, then that 100 rupees will let me or allow me to buy 1 kg of mangoes, which means that I am demanding the quantity, which is 1 kg of mango, at a price which is rupees 100 on a given time, which is today. So, this is nothing but your demand, where demand will refer to all the possible quantities of a commodity that a particular consumer is ready to buy at a given price and at a given point of time. So, as a consumer, not only that we wish to buy, but at the same time we should also have the ability to buy. Not only that we should be willing to buy, but we should also have the purchasing power. As a person, for example, we may be willing or wishing to buy many things, but do we have the ability in terms of earnings or income levels or purchasing power which will help us to buy all these things. So, demand is nothing but willingness to buy, which is backed by the ability to pay. So, we should be willing to buy something, and at the same time we should be also having the ability to pay the price for that particular thing which we are buying. For example, during summer, most of us may want to sit in a cooler room where we would want to buy an air conditioner or an air cooler, where we should also have that particular thing is willingness, but at the same time along with that willingness to beat the heat, we should also have the price or the purchasing power with the help of which we are able to pay the price for that particular air conditioner or the cooler which we would want to buy. So, therefore, demand is nothing but all the quantities of goods that a consumer wishes to buy and also has the ability to pay for that particular product. Now, when you are talking about a kind of a table which is showing a relationship between different quantities of commodities which are purchased at different price, that particular table will be called as a demand schedule. So, demand schedule is nothing but a table, a tabular presentation of different quantities of commodity that can be purchased at different prices. For example, as on today, if I am having rupees 1000 with me and I wish to buy some fruits, then out of that rupees 1000, I may devote rupees 250 towards buying 1 kg of apples, or rupees 300 for 1 kg of mangoes, or I may spend rupees 150 on 1 dozen bananas. So, what happens here is when I am preparing a table of how much I am spending for what quantities of commodities, then that particular table will be called as a demand schedule. And this particular table, if we convert it in the form of a graph, then that graph becomes your demand curve. So, a graphical representation of all the quantities of commodities that a consumer wishes to buy at a particular price will be called as your demand curve. Graphically, if you are presenting the quantities and the prices, that graph which is showing the quantities and the prices will be called as a demand curve. If you are putting it in the form of a table and showing the quantity and the prices, the table will be called as a demand schedule. So, what have we learned so far? We have learned that demand is nothing but ability of a consumer to pay for some quantity of commodities that he is willing to buy. So, willingness to buy backed by ability to pay, and demand schedule will be a table which is showing us different quantities of commodities that a consumer is buying at different prices. And the same table, if you are converting in the form of a graph, that particular graph will be called as your demand curve. Now, there are economists who have given lot of theories which are related to how demand is calculated, what role demand plays in the economy. One prominent economist who talked about the law of demand is Alfred Marshall. Many theories you have so far studied about Alfred Marshall. Law of demand, in Alfred Marshall's word, says that it is nothing but the amount of demand which may increase or decrease with increase or decrease in the price. So, here we are talking about change in the demand depending on the change in the price of the commodity. So, law of demand says that all other things which are remaining constant. What are these all other things? We will just tell you in a few minutes. All other things remaining constant, in case price of the commodity changes, then what is the impact on the quantity demanded? Quantity demanded also will change. For example, most of you may do shopping online, maybe on Amazon, Flipkart or some other e-commerce platforms. It so happens that we have added some items to the cart and we wait for the price to drop, so that when the price falls, we will start ordering the items from the cart. This behavior of the consumer shows that the consumer is waiting for the price to drop down so that he will buy that particular commodity. So, law of demand states that when price falls, demand increases, and when price increases, demand falls. So, there is an inverse relationship between quantity demanded and between the price of the commodity. We all know, for example, when companies offer discounts, maybe for example on cars, automobiles, maybe two-wheelers or four-wheelers, or on electronic items like refrigerators, air conditioners, etc., the quantity demanded goes up because there is a discount which is being given on all these commodities. More and more customers would want to buy the product. So, therefore, law of demand says that when price falls, quantity demanded rises, and when price rises, quantity demanded falls. So, there is an inverse relationship between the two. And what are the other things that we were talking about? As the law says, other things remaining constant. Other things here mean prices of other commodities. Say for example, if I wish to buy a Maruti Suzuki and the price of Maruti Suzuki on a particular day is some amount, and on the other hand there is a competing product of Maruti Suzuki whose price is also reduced. Now, if that particular reduced price is there, then I may want to go for that product rather than buying a Maruti Suzuki. So, what happens here is, it is not the price of the commodity which I am willing to buy, but it is the price of some other good which is impacting my demand. So, that is price of other commodities, or it can also be advertising effect, or it can also be income of the consumer. For example, when my income was at a particular level, say 40,000 or something, amount of commodities that I may buy may be different, but when my income increases, say for example to 60,000, all those commodities which I was not able to buy when my income was 40, now I will start buying when my income becomes 60. So, therefore, income also has an impact on the quantity demanded. Technology, taste, preferences, habits of customers, prices of substitute products, all these put together are nothing but the other things which are there, which also have an impact on the demand. So, therefore, law of demand states that other things remaining constant, the commodity demanded rises or falls depending upon the increase or decrease in the price of the commodity which is in question. If you can look onto your screens, you have the price of the goods which are there and the commodities which are demanded. If you see at 2 rupees, the customer was taking 200 units, at 4 rupees 150 units. As the price is going up from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 or 10 and 12, quantity demanded is falling there. So, therefore, this is nothing but an inverse relationship, and the demand curve is sloping downwards from left to right, showing this particular inverse relationship which is there. So, in today's session, what have we learnt? We have learnt what is meant by demand, and we have seen what is meant by a demand schedule and a demand curve, and what is law of demand, and what are the various factors which are other than the price which are having an impact on the demand, and how is a demand curve presented with slopes from left to right and which has got a negative slope which is there depending upon whatever are the prices of the commodity and depending upon what are the units of the commodity which are being demanded. So, therefore, with the help of this, we can actually write a demand function like mathematical representation of all these variables put together. We can just say QD, which is nothing but quantity demanded, which is a function of, it is a function of price of the commodity, price of the substitutes, price of the complementary goods which are there, income level of the customer, technology which is there, advertising effect which can be there, taste, habits, preferences, culture, social norms, all these factors which may range from a simple price to a bigger factor like social cultural factors. All these put together have an impact on the demand. For example, if you come to social cultural factors, for example, we talk about in rural India we talk about demand for refrigerators, and when Godrej and other companies were targeting rural India, they thought about what should be the color of the refrigerator. So, at that point of time, many people in that rural India were not willing to buy refrigerators which were in shades of black, grey or dark blue, because they thought that these colors are unauspicious. So, they were willing to buy refrigerators which were red or maroon or brighter colors which depicted prosperity. So, that way what happens here is demand for that particular commodity is actually impacted by culture and social norms of that particular rural Indian community which is there. Not only these factors, but there could be many things like advertising. Sometimes it so happens that we see an ad and based on the ad we start demanding the product. So, price of the commodity, price of substitutes, price of complementary, my own income level, all these put together have an impact on the demand. So, when I am talking about all these factors which are having an impact on the demand, this particular equation which I will formulate is called as the demand function. So, in today's session we have talked about what is meant by demand, what is demand curve, what is a demand schedule, what is a demand function, and how does the demand actually work in the market, where in case I am showing demand of one particular buyer, it will be called as an individual demand. If I am showing the demand of all the buyers in the market, then that will be a summation of the individual demand which will be called as a market demand. So, you talk about individual demand and the market demand there. So, today's session related to demand analysis is an introduction to what is demand, demand curve, demand schedule, and we talk about the law of demand, the demand function, how is a demand curve presented graphically, and what is meant by an individual demand and what is meant by a market demand. Thank you.